Hello and welcome to Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez. I have hurricane meteorologist Craig Setzer. Hurricane season's just around the corner. I mean, literally, actually, just started June 1st. So, Craig, what's happening? How do you get ready for hurricane season?
So I've kind of changed. I've been in Florida for a quarter of a century, 25, going on 26 years now. And every year, my thinking with respect to hurricane season changes just a little bit. So this is after many years of doing it and many years of helping people prepare. And I think I start first with a mindset that we live in a hurricane state. And I really learned this from a trip I made to Cuba to talk to their meteorologist. That in Cuba, there's just a culture of hurricanes that people understand they will have to at some point in time deal with hurricanes. And I think that is lacking in Florida. We're always like, is this year going to be bad? I hope not. I hope I don't have to get ready and stuff. I think we always need to live with a baseline of we need to be ready to some extent. And it's not buy all your supplies now or do this now. And I think that's kind of a false message that we give. Hurricane season's coming. Are you ready? Readiness is kind of a step-by-step process for us in Florida. It's not all at once, but it starts with having a plan. And that's the main thing. And, you always hear, have a plan. But most people don't really know what that even means.
Hmm. Well, I do know. I mean, we're kind of a step ahead this time. We're not always, in the Jimenez household, but we did already run our generator. So that was a step up.
Yeah.
And we always, we have water, so we've got at least water and a generator that runs. But to your point, how do you prepare, or what should we get? What is like the absolute necessities that we need to have on any given day, especially
Right.
with like what we had a storm the other day where we were flooded out, and that's not even a hurricane.
Right. Right. Yeah. So really what your plan starts with, it depends on where you live, because the hurricane problem, so to speak, is very, very complex. Different people have different risks and have to respond in different ways. The first step of your plan is, do you live in an evacuation zone? Because if you do, then your plan means preparing your house to leave your house, and not to go to, out of the state, but just to get out of the evacuation zone. And so you should, if you live in the evacuation zone, already have in your mind, if they issue an evacuation order, we know what we're going to do. It's not going to be oh, should we or shouldn't we? We just know what we're going to do. And then for those of us who don't live in an evacuation zone, our plan basically is to get through a storm, and then the after part of the storm. There's really two sides to it. There's the, it's terrifying, the wind's blowing, things are breaking, but then what are we going to be able to do to wait 3 or 4 days for help to come? And are we going to have water like you do, have a generator like you do, and have other things to just get us until we start getting help? Because usually after the storm is well, not usually, but often after the storm, that's when most of the fatalities and injuries occur, because
Right.
it's getting through the after part. Do you have medication? Do you have what you need? Do you have special medical needs? Things like that. So it's a very complex issue, but you have to think of yourself in terms of, what am I going to do to get through 4 days of no power, and maybe my windows are broken and things like that.
Yeah, even that whole roof thing, it's like, even if you have a tarp, how do you get on the roof? If you have
Right.
no ladder, or
Mhm.
if you don't have a means, or do you have someone, check around your neighborhood even. Is there someone in your neighborhood who could help you get a tarp on your roof? I mean, these are things you could, talk about in your neighborhood, put up a sign, and even start it in your own neighborhood. I'm all about that. It's like, who needs help in your neighborhood? Come together, and then that way you're not trying to do hurricane preparedness by yourself. And make it make it a barbecue. Who knows?
Right.
You know, you
Right.
know, correct. You know how to have fun. You're always fun. That's why I love years and years, of working with Craig so long ago. I'm just so excited to have you on. You guys just don't know how much fun Craig is.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's stressful. A hurricane is, but also the odds that any one community is just going to be flattened is very, very low. Most of us will have to deal with power outages that are of an extended duration, or water issues where there's not enough water pressure and you might have to boil your water, things like that. So it's, for most of us, it's going to be an inconvenience. For some of us, though, unfortunately, it's going to be something worse, and that's kind of what we always prepare a little bit for the top end, but we're not, so to speak, worried about hurricane season. Of course, it's stressful. When Irma was coming, I lost 9 pounds in 7 days, and it was mostly because
Wow.
of stress and just I didn't have time to eat. It was such a big
Yeah.
lift for preparation and stuff. So
Yeah. I tell you, it is. And what about, being sure that we can see you, see your reports, see what's coming up. What kind of devices or should we really keep in the house, because batteries do die,
right,
if you don't use them.
right,
So what kind of devices can we use today that doesn't rely on Wi-Fi, so to speak, Is
right.
there something or what do you suggest?
So I've even thought about that, and I call that part of the communication plan, which is where you let friends or family outside of a hurricane zone know when they need to come and help you. So if you don't hear from me, and I've got this plan with my family in Tampa, my brother and sister live there. If they don't hear anything from me within 4 days, they are to bring gasoline, and water and some food and head to my house after 4 days. And that means they
Wow.
haven't heard even a peep from me,
Wow. Yeah.
So that's kind of my backup plan. And it goes vice versa. If they were to be hit and I don't hear a "we're doing okay" message, a text, then I head up there. In terms of seeing me, I mean, I've started kind of a YouTube channel and on the Twitter page, which you graciously have put at the bottom on the crawl at the screen.
At Craig Setzer.
At Craig Setzer. So I will send out a link when I'm doing video on YouTube. Unfortunately, the YouTube algorithm makes it hard to find certain live programs and stuff. But when there is a hurricane event, I'm going live and doing it just like I would do it on TV. Talk about what you need to know. Talk about where the storm is. Talk about what we're doing now. A lot of people don't realize, especially those who haven't been through a hurricane, it's not a sprint. A hurricane is a marathon. It is days and days of gradual preparations, increasing to maybe something that you're preparing for something very big. But but the thing about the way I approach a hurricane preparation routine or plan is you don't do everything at once, so that at any point along the way, if the storm turns, you can just stop preparing and then just watch. Right? Don't go
Yeah,
crazy.
right.
It's several days of preparation so that it's paced out, and that's
I
what I
know
call it a marathon.
so many times people are like who are outside of the media. They're like, "Oh, the media's they're in, cahoots with the grocery stores, they're just making money." I'm like, "No, we wish, but that doesn't happen that way." Or
Right.
the Home Depot or the Lowe's, we would appreciate that, but that's just not happening. I mean, our concern is your concern. We're watching the storm, as it's happening. And as a news agency, which I like to share with people all the time, is news actually operates very much like a nonprofit. You know,
Mhm.
we are sponsored through our ads. I said our main goal is to tell the community what it needs to know most. And when hurricane season comes, you don't want to go anywhere else. Besides hearing from a meteorologist that really knows what they're doing. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is your thoughts on the intensity of the storms and even just like I was talking a moment ago, these storms that have come through that are dumping so much water that was out of this world, but then the tornadoes. It seems like we're being hit more with tornadoes in this area that I don't remember having that problem as much. I thought hurricanes was it. We used to be able to run and we were good. But now we seem to be getting hit with these tornadoes. Any thoughts on that?
So it's funny because I think most people view weather history from the perspective of their life. And in the big scale of things, our life is like that big compared to, hurricane or tornado or atmospheric history and stuff. So I usually try to like look at bigger scales. And recently it was asked about, are we seeing more tornadoes? And we have these cycles in Florida where over several decades we see more tornadoes, and then we have a lull. And I think people kind of get used to the lull where there's not many tornadoes, And then when it goes back to a normal or above normal, then they're like, oh, we've never had this many tornadoes. And from the perspective of that person's life, that's true, but kind of in the big picture of things, that's not necessarily the case. One thing with hurricanes is that, I mean, we can look back in history, the 30s, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, even beginning with 1919, but the 20s, 30s, and 40s, there were a lot of hurricanes that hit South Florida,
Mm.
and and in fact, 1926, they call it the Great Miami Hurricane, and it postponed the opening of the University of Miami. That's why the team is called the Miami Hurricanes, because of that hurricane.
Oh gosh.
So
Okay.
so there's this history that we have here that I think we often forget, that we are a hurricane vulnerable area, and whether there's a lot one year or not a lot one year, we always kind of have to live with this may be our year that we get a big hit.
Well, I want you to one follow Craig Setzer on LinkedIn, for one. Also follow his. You go to his website. He's got craigsetzer.com, and go to his Twitter page. Follow him on Twitter. If you want to know what's going on, Craig is going to be following it. And you're going to get a different perspective because it's going to be coming from him and his experience. He used to be a storm chaser. He's got to feel, like I said, he's lots of fun. Who chases storms? Craig does. But Craig, if there's anything that you want people to know most about hurricane season, what would you say to them?
I would say don't pay attention to, are we going to get hit this year or are we not going to get hit this year? Kind of just live with, it's like, it would be like saying, if you lived in Buffalo, New York, are you going to get snow this year or are you not going to get snow this year? Well, you probably will get a little bit of snow, right? And we'll probably have some type of tropical threat, but is this going to be the big year? We don't know. And so as opposed to being like hoping that it's not, I always think people should have a plan that it might be, so that when it is, it's easier to incorporate your plan. The big saying that they say is, throughout the hurricane research community, is if you don't have a plan, you will end up on the highway with everybody else trying to leave. Because people
Mm,
without a plan, they just leave, and you see what happens with the traffic jams, and
it's
you don't want to do
horrible.
that. And we're one of the best places to go through a hurricane here in South Florida, because of our building codes, because of our ability to respond to a big event. We really, and I told a lot of my friends in Irma, look, you've got your shutters up, you're in a good area, don't leave. And they went to Tampa, and
Mm,
then the next morning, we're
wow.
coming back. And I'm like,
Oh my
well, see?
goodness.
So just stay put, unless you live in like a mobile home or something, or evacuation zone. Stay put. We'll get through it. We always do.
That is such good information. Thank you, Craig. I'm glad I asked that question. I've never heard anyone quite answer it like that, and I really appreciate that insight. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, start following Craig. Me
Thanks.
too. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsworthy Stories, getting us prepared for hurricane season. Have a great one.
James Amps of Amps International LLC, making crucial connections in Puerto Rico for the next Amps Entrepreneurship Leadership Institute retreat. All the spots are now filled thanks to partnering with groups like the 4-H clubs in Puerto Rico. The leadership making it happen.
I'm Judith Conde, family consumer science educator, also 4-H state leader in Puerto Rico.
James Amps also visited the Vocational School of Agriculture, where students were learning how to milk cows, about various hydroponic plants, and how to use heavy equipment. An added plus, there is no cost to attend. A leader in the Future Farms of America also joined James at the school and brought her horse for students to meet. The next stop, the Boys and Girls Club of Puerto Rico, where some of the students from the organization will be attending the AMPS Institute retreat. The AMPS Entrepreneurship Leadership Institute retreats are sponsored by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in partnership with the University of Puerto Rico, because the biggest threat in the region is food sustainability and conservation. Expect to see more stories as the retreat gets underway, or go to ampsinstitute.com to see stories from the retreat in St. Croix and St. Thomas.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
I'm a first-generation Filipino American. You don't always feel you're a part of the country you live in. It's this weird middle space sometimes that you have to live inside of. But when you meet others that are also living in that space, you'll learn to know that it's its own unique space too.
There is a road laid out for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Leading down to the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
What do you think?
I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free, take me down to the river and walk.
People tell me how lucky my daughter is to have been adopted. But really, we're the lucky ones. Learn more at adoptuskids.org.